Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are well, and I hope that you are ready for another lottery this month. And this time we're going to try a brand new, exciting reading type. So whoever is picked in this reading is going to receive a reading type that has never been done before, and somebody has just jumped out, literally. And it's Emily. So I'm going to email you, Emily, and ask you a question. Sorry for being so vague, but the question is needed for this reading type. And thank you for everybody else for joining me and for supporting my work. And see you in the reading, in the video soon. All right, so Emily, you haven't given me a specific negative thought to work with, which would have been required for this reading. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a very frequent, very typical negative thought that many of us have. So this reading is for you, Emily, but I think other people watching this video can also relate. So in today's Reframing tarot reading, we are going to work with the thought, I'm not good enough. So actually, I'm very happy that I came up with this reading type, because this is something that the tarot is actually amazing for. This cognitive technique of reframing, shifting your perspective, your understanding, modifying the narrative it's something that is incredibly beneficial to your mental well-being. And the tarot is an absolutely perfect tool to do this. And I've just realized this not too long ago. When I'm having a bad day and it feels like I cannot get out of the loop of negative thoughts, I often use the tarot to guide me and show me a different way, a different interpretation. And so in this reframing reading, we are going to work with this notion that I am not good enough. So even saying that, I'm sure that you can feel the low vibration, the negativity, the sadness coming from this thought. And so let's see if we can somehow change that. So the first card is going to represent the thought itself. So this card represents, I'm not good enough. Okay. Now, the next card will reveal its effect on you. So the impact of entertaining this thought without any criticism, without any supervision, just letting it run amok in your mind. Let's see the effect. Okay. And now The next card will reveal a way to reframe this thought. And how that reframed thought can produce a different effect. Okay, so let's have a look. So anyway, if you are interested in trying this reading for yourself, and if you have, a recurring, stubborn, negative thought that is kind of stuck in your head, and you want to give it a try, I encourage you to check out the description box where you can find a link to my website where you can book this reading type. But let's see. I'm not good enough. 3 of Cups. And the effect is Emperor. Okay. The reframed version, 10 of Pentacles. And its effect, King of Wands. So, the first thing I'm noticing here in these cards is that the effect that you are subconsciously looking for in saying to yourself, I'm not good enough, is a sense of control. We have 2 characters here that are leaders. The Emperor and the King of Wands, they both represent a sort of leadership position, a level of control over the situation. But they have very different leadership styles. So actually, the current frame of I'm not good enough is creating stress and scarcity. And the reframed version of I'm not good enough, it can lead to a more laissez-faire, a more vibrant, fiery version of that same control. So it's interesting because sometimes negative thoughts, they appear in our heads, in our minds, as a distorted attempt to do something positive. And I'm seeing the same thing here with this thought. I'm not good enough is an experiment. It's an attempt to grab some control. If I tell myself I'm not good enough, then at least it's me being hard on myself and not other people. So, let's see. I'm not good enough. In its current version, we have the 3 of Cups here. And the 3 of Cups is, first of all, it's water. So this is an emotionally charged statement at this moment for you, Emily. There's a connection with your social life. There's a connection with how you are perceived and processed by other people emotionally. And the 3 of Cups, it's basically a situation in which you're feeding off of other people's feedback, their energy, the way they are emoting to you, that influences and it defines how you feel about yourself. So this is a very vulnerable position to be hearing that sentence in, because if you're not good enough, it essentially means that your emotions do not match that of your environment. So the feeling of not being good enough is not having the same emotional background, not being on the same emotional wavelength as other people. And as a result, being very dependent, very vulnerable, and very fragile in social situations. Perhaps being rejected, being judged, or being at the mercy of other people and how they feel about you. And when you think about it, not having the appropriate emotion is not a good reason to exclude anybody from any situation. It's not something that you can just easily produce. Emotions are not something that you create. They are waves spontaneously generated by your internal state and your environment. So this is kind of like a double bind situation where you are trying to match your energy and your emotional output so that it fits into some sort of social framework. And there's also this effort to have a good time, to be present, to be in the moment. But how can you do that when you're worried about being judged and trying to purposefully engineer your own emotions to be appropriate? So that's a very cruel thing that one can do to themselves. I'm not good enough is like saying, I don't feel good enough. When I'm out and about, when I'm interacting with people, I'm not feeling good enough. I should be feeling better. And beating yourself up about not being able to reflect the appropriate emotions back onto people, and the fear of abandonment that arises out of that. It's kind of like a self-inflicted loop. It's it feeds back into itself, and it generates more anxiety and more negative feelings, negative thoughts. So as things are now, being good enough would require you to do the impossible. So I think that is very important to notice here, is that the expectation that you're setting for yourself is not something that you can will into existence. It's not something that you can want to have. I'm not good enough, at its core, for you, seems to be based in the fear that you do not seem happy or spontaneous or lively enough for other people. That your misery might come out and be on display. But genuine emotions cannot be manufactured. And so being hard on yourself for not being able to be happy in a given moment, being good enough, It seems like it's being happy to be around people. If that's not happening on its own, if that's not something that just happens within you, then it's not something that you can force onto yourself, but it seems like you're trying to do that. The Emperor is a major arcana card, and it's about having this incredibly strict and draconian attitude towards yourself. The Emperor is all about discipline and all about conscientiousness and making sure that things are in order, that there's a hierarchy, that there's hard work, that there's obedience, that there's authority that is being respected. And you seem to be crumbling under this authority, and it's having the exact opposite effect than what you're aiming at here. So, at the core, at the center of this notion of not being good enough, of not being accepted, there's essentially the feeling that I'm not good enough for others. And so this is where the superego, this emperor-like figure, comes into the picture and starts to terrorize you and starts to make this really well-organized plan that it's trying to force onto you. But you do realize how ridiculous this is. Because, it sounds like the Emperor is trying to orchestrate or concoct a plan for you to have spontaneous fun. And that does not seem to be working because because even though this is about matters of the heart, so it seems like this is very intimately linked with how you feel, how intimate you can be with other people, how open you can be with other people. But at the same time, there's this notion that there's a performance that is accepted of you, that you need to achieve something here. And the Emperor is quite simply trying to force some rules and some regulations, some of these restrictions on you. You can't be like this, you can't be like that. You can't do this, you can't do that. The Emperor is in my mind at least, is a very Saturn-like character. His identity is built on saying no and abstaining from certain things, certain practices. And in order to shift this idea, this thought, the cards are advising a very different approach. First of all, in the current frame, we have a watery understanding. So it's emotions. And when it comes to emotions, there's always a lot of ambiguity. And then in the sea of chaos, in the sea of ambiguity, the emperor is trying to force this tyrannical structure on it. And it's a very demanding, very, very harsh kind of energy. It's almost saying like, it's your responsibility how you feel. Now that's not really true, is it? I mean, I think this is incredibly toxic, and this is, something that I hear very often in New Age and esoteric videos and lectures, and I don't like it. You're not responsible for how you feel. Feelings, they arise almost out of nothing. They are created spontaneously. They are not your responsibility. The only responsibility that you have, I guess, is trying to understand those feelings and interpret them in a better way. But this is exactly what this reading is aiming at. So let's see what the recommendation is. So, water and earth. The new perspective, the new frame. The 10 of Pentacles. It's a radically different idea. Earth, the element of earth, has to do with practical matters. So it has a very, very different relation to the self. In the first frame, I would say the self is treated as if it was as if it was an actor or an actress. It's treated as a dream character with its boundaries and its outlines blurred. With the 10 of Pentacles, we have you looking at the self as if it was a resource. So, I'm not good enough. This question could be slightly modified and shifted in the right direction by saying, I'm not good enough, but for what? What exactly? What is the tangible result that I am looking at? Am I good enough to take a walk? Am I good enough to cook something? Am I good enough to breathe and continue existing? Simple things, perhaps. And then you can also think about some more elaborate skills that you have, that you can use in order to reach your goals and in order to grab more of that control that you are craving here. So if you are in a social situation, the question should be, am I good enough for a specific task? So something simple like helping somebody do the washing up. Can you do that? Can you help them with that? You probably can, but if you can't, there's something else that you can provide to yourself and to others in that moment. And so, with the focus of what you can provide to yourself, most importantly, in that moment, can I look after myself by sitting down comfortably in this moment and focusing on my breathing instead of trying to do anything else? Am I good enough to do that? Do I have that tool in my toolbox? And by asking yourself the right questions in the right moment, and if we had, perhaps a more specific, a more personal negative thought that we could work with, then maybe I could give you some more specific examples, but the principle is the same. It's the same thing. Treating yourself as if you were a complex set of resources that you can utilize at any given moment. And, when you break it down and you're not trying to focus on the entire performance, the entire impression that you are giving other people, because I think with the first card we saw that this is heavily dependent on how you're being perceived, how you're able to gel with other people at any given moment. And that's kind of a broad thing. Sometimes when people are looking at you, they don't even know what they expect from you, especially when it comes to emotions. They don't know what they are looking for, so how could you? But going into the smaller details of the moment and reinforcing yourself, I can do this in this moment right now. I have this tool. I have this skill. I have this ability. I have this possibility, even if it's just a possibility, to perhaps walk away or to stay. You have both possibilities, and that creates a sense of abundance, a feeling of being rich. The Ten of Pentacles is all about having that connection with the idea of prosperity, being prosperous, being full of opportunities, because you are at any given moment. And you can utilize, you can mobilize a lot of the things that you already know. And by focusing on what you can do in any given moment, without, even trying to figure out if it's good enough, just what you can do. If you can't do it well, if you can't do it perfectly, it doesn't matter, but you can do it. You can reach within, and you can utilize these parts of yourself once you distance yourself from this paralyzing idea of you being this social construct, this unity of being, an entity that is somehow just one thing. So realizing that you have all of these little nuggets of potential in each moment is going to invoke a different leadership style. from you. And it's going to create a different effect. So once you look at yourself as if you were, as if you were your own empire, your own army, you're not just one thing. You're a set of different beings with different skills and different things to offer. But you are in the driver's seat. And your choice, your actions in regards to which parts you will pick, which opportunity that exists latently within you, which opportunity are you going to tap into? It's a creative act. And the King of Wands is the King of Fire. Because the wands in the tarot, they relate to the element of fire. So the King of Wands can create a different quality of acting. Instead of being restrictive, instead of saying to yourself, you cannot do this because you're going to appear, not good enough. You can say to yourself, you can do this, and you can do that, and you can do some other thing, and you can do 100 different things. Whether you can do them well enough doesn't matter, but it is within your power to invoke these different parts of yourself, to call them, to invite them into the moment. And so it becomes kind of like this interesting game of strategy where, let's say you're in a conversation with some friends and you're worried about how they are going to receive you, whether they are going to accept you. Let's say you're in a new friend circle. They don't know you very well, and you're worried if they are going to accept you emotionally. So what you can do in that moment, when the anxiety starts to creep in and the thought of I'm not good enough starts to make its way to your conscious attention, what you can do is, so what can I do here? What skill does this moment require in order to soothe myself, not to impress anybody, not to appear a certain way, but to stabilize myself in the moment? I can perhaps be of service here. I can perhaps share a piece of information that I only know. I can perhaps utilize a skill that is going to serve these people, or that is going to help somebody out. There are many different things that I can do here. And once you start turning your attention on those things that you can do, you will become more like the King of Wands, more like a painter who's looking for their favorite color, who's trying to mix some interesting colors and create an interesting visual experience. And you become less like this ghost made up of assumptions about what other people want to get out of you when, and I want to emphasize this, more often than not, people themselves don't know what they are looking from you. They just don't. They might say that they do, but they don't really. And so, being good enough in such an environment is not possible because there's no criteria. There's really no criteria. And the criteria that you are believing right now, it's very ambiguous. And even if the criteria was crystal clear, you have to have a good time, let's say. You have to have positive emotion in this moment. If that were the criteria, that would be pure madness, because that's not something that you can just conjure up. It's not something that you can artificially bring to the table. So it's best to forget about that wider context even, and to just look for these resources within that you can tap into. Okay, so I hope that you enjoy this reading, and I hope everybody else who decided to come along with us for this ride enjoyed it as well. Again, if you're interested in trying this reading, feel free to email me if you have questions about it, or if you'd like to book a reading. And I want to say thank you, all of you, for sticking around. I hope I'm going to be posting videos more frequently in the near future. See you soon.